When we were driving back on that one day in August of 2014, and we decided that we were going to try to do something, the recovery packet was the first thing, like Director Malloy said, that we decided to do. It was cheap, it was easy, and we wanted to start something right away. I mean, we're people of action, and we wanted to start something that didn't require a whole lot of money, didn't require a whole lot of training, was easy to do, and something that didn't require a whole lot of tracking, right? So the recovery packet was the simplest thing to start off with. I'm going to get into how that was distributed, because that's really important, and it's going to sound very simple, but it was very impactful the way we implemented it. So first off, why the culture change? Why is there a need to change culture? I tell this story wherever I go. Many of you guys have been there. Maybe some of you are still there. I know many of your employees still are there. I'm going to go back a little bit further than that. 3.5 years ago, I was one of those guys, why are we doing this? Why did we drive so fast to get here? Maybe if we would have went around the block one time, we wouldn't be having to deal with this guy right now. I'm looking down at a face where I've done CPR on the guy 3 times. Like, what a waste of resources, right? Because what are we going to do? We're just going to bring him back. He's going to do it again, and then we're going to be back here. And it was just this vicious cycle, and we all have been there. It's my attempt to not necessarily paint a bad picture of our agency, but be transparent, because that's where I was. If I were to stand up here and say otherwise, then I wouldn't be very honest. It's very embarrassing to do that, I'll tell you that. It's not easy for me to stand here and say that, but that's where I was. And there was one event that changed my life, or changed my perspective and my life, essentially, was a run that we made on a 20-year-old girl for an overdose who was at a party the night before. And we were called there in the afternoon for a 20-year-old female cardiac arrest. We had to force entry because the gentleman in the residence wouldn't let us in. He didn't want to let us in because he didn't want to get in trouble. When we finally forced entry and made our way in, we discovered that she had been dead since the night before. So she was cold, she was purple, she was stiff, and she was in the corner in the fetal position of this dark bedroom. And so I walked in and I saw her huddled there in the corner. And for some reason, I don't know what it was, but for some reason there was something that struck me different about this particular individual. I don't know why, because I'd seen many individuals like that before. But I looked down, and all of a sudden there was some questions I started to ask myself. Where's her father? I mean, this is somebody's daughter. Where's her grandfather? This is somebody's granddaughter. One bad decision led her to the corner of that bedroom that night. And I started to internalize that a little bit. I've got daughters of my own, and you guys that are out there that have daughters may get this. They're one bad decision away, right? Ultimately. They're one bad decision away from entering into that same fate. This was somebody's daughter. This was somebody's granddaughter. And she was with this guy who really didn't care anything about her. So that kind of changed things for me a little bit. And I started to look at it from a decision standpoint. And I made that comment that, yeah, it was one bad decision that led her there. But after that one bad decision, it didn't become a choice for her anymore. And that was kind of the educational piece for me. If we were to continue on with this program with the belief that, why are we doing this? Because we're just going to overdose again. Why are we going to hand out this packet? Why are we going to bring out the QRT? Because we're just going to do this again. We wouldn't be successful at any of this. So from a leadership perspective, we started to brainstorm a little bit on how do we get guys to really buy into this? Because ultimately, they're the ones making the runs. They're that first point of contact. If they don't believe or buy into the system, none of this is going to be successful. And that's not unlike anything we do, right? From a leadership perspective, chiefs in here, if our personnel aren't doing what we want them to do out on the streets, if they're not following the way our mission, vision, values, goals. If they're not doing that out in the streets, then we could sit behind a desk and come up with the best vision ever. But it isn't going to happen. We're not going to be successful.